Amora Johnson sat at her polished oak desk one final time, her fingers brushing over the smooth surface as though committing every detail to memory. The office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, had been her second home for the past 3 years. She had organized meetings, balanced impossible schedules, soothed crises, and stood silently at the side of the most enigmatic man she had ever known, Alexander King. For the world, he was the cold, untouchable billionaire CEO who commanded industries with the flick of a pen. For her, he was the man she secretly loved but could never claim. Today marked the end of that chapter. Her resignation letter had been accepted 2 weeks ago, and though her colleagues had given her warm farewells, the weight of this final day pressed heavier on her chest than she had anticipated. She wasn't leaving out of discontent. She was leaving to finally pursue her own dreams of starting a small creative consultancy. Yet, hidden beneath her determination was the ache of a love she had never confessed. Alexander's office door opened, and the sound of his steady footsteps echoed down the hall. Amora stood quickly, smoothing the folds of her navy dress, her professional mask firmly in place. He entered with his usual composure, dark suit perfectly tailored, expression unreadable, eyes sharp as though no detail of the world ever escaped him. "Miss Johnson," he said evenly, though his voice carried a subtle weight, "I trust everything is wrapped up." "Yes, Mr. King," she replied with practiced poise, though her throat tightened. "Your calendar is up to date, the reports are organized, and your new assistant will have a smooth transition." For a long moment, silence filled the room. His gaze lingered on her, softer than usual, almost searching. Inside, Alexander felt an unfamiliar pang of panic. 3 years of relying on her brilliance, her calm, her quiet strength, he hadn't realized how deeply intertwined she had become with his life until now, when she was slipping away. Amora forced a polite smile, ignoring the flutter in her chest. "Thank you for the opportunity, sir. It has been an honor working with you." She extended her hand, formal and distant, as though her heart weren't breaking. Alexander took it slowly, his grip firm but reluctant to let go. Outwardly composed, inwardly in turmoil, he watched her walk away, unaware that this goodbye ignited a battle within him he could no longer ignore. The door closed behind Amora, and for the first time in years, Alexander King allowed his carefully crafted mask to slip. The office that usually hummed with confidence and power felt unbearably hollow. He sank into the leather chair behind his desk, elbows resting on the mahogany surface, his hands steepled in thought. He had intended to tell her. How many times had the words pressed against his throat, only to be swallowed down by fear of vulnerability? "Stay. Don't go. I need you, not just in this office, but in my life." Yet each opportunity had slipped away, buried beneath his pride and the unshakable image of control he showed the world. Alexander wasn't a man who stumbled with decisions. Business empires rose and fell by his commands, fortunes multiplied at his touch. But when it came to Amora, he hesitated. She wasn't like the women who drifted in and out of his social sphere, dazzled by wealth and title. She was brilliant, compassionate, strong-willed, capable of matching his sharpness with her own grace. Her laughter had been the one sound that softened the brutal edges of his days. Her presence had been his anchor. And now, she was gone. He leaned back, staring at the city skyline, its twinkling lights failing to ease the ache in his chest. "If she leaves today," he murmured to himself, his voice low but resolute, "I won't let her go for good. I'll win her back, not as an employee, but as my future wife." The words shocked even him, but they felt truer than anything he had ever spoken. In the boardroom, Alexander was a ruthless strategist, untouchable and cold. But in the private chambers of his heart, he was a man in love, aching, determined, and ready to risk everything for the woman who had unknowingly unraveled him. The world would never suspect it, but behind the billionaire's icy composure lived a romantic, one who had just found his greatest battle, winning the heart of Amora Johnson. The morning sun spilled through the modest curtains of Amora Johnson's new apartment, casting golden light over stacks of notebooks, art supplies, and a laptop balanced on a cluttered table. Gone were the tailored suits, the endless schedules, and the weight of corporate corridors. For the first time in years, she woke up without the constant pressure of Alexander King's world pressing on her shoulders. Freedom tasted both exhilarating and bittersweet. She had dreamed of this moment, pursuing her own creative consultancy, helping small brands tell their stories through design and strategy. Every checklist she scribbled, every late-night brainstorming session reminded her she was finally building something for herself. And yet, an emptiness lingered. She couldn't shake the image of Alexander's face on her last day, his eyes steady, his hand reluctant to let go of hers. She told herself it was her imagination, that he was simply being courteous. He was her boss, distant, untouchable, carved from ice. Surely, he had never thought of her beyond her professional efficiency. Still, her heart betrayed her with whispers. What if? That evening, her best friend, Tasha, dropped by, bringing pizza and laughter. "Girl, you're glowing already," Tasha teased, scanning the half-finished mood board scattered across the floor. "This is your time. Forget that billionaire boss of yours. Men like him don't see women like us." Amora forced a smile, though Tasha's words stung. She wanted to believe them, to convince herself she had imagined every stolen glance, every softened tone of his voice. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had fallen for him, and walking away had been the bravest and most painful choice she had ever made. Later that night, lying awake in bed, Amora stared at the ceiling. She wondered if love was something meant for her, or if her story would always be one of sacrifice. She had chosen freedom over longing, but her heart remained restless. She whispered into the silence, almost as a prayer, "Maybe someday, maybe someone will love me the way I've always dreamed." Alexander King was not a man who accepted defeat. In the weeks following Amora's departure, he redirected the same relentless energy he used to dominate boardrooms into learning about her new path. Discreetly, through trusted channels, he gathered details about her budding consultancy. The small office she rented, the passion project she dreamed of, the late nights she poured into bringing her vision to life. What struck him most wasn't the fragility of her venture, but the fire behind it. Amora wasn't waiting for handouts. She was building from the ground up with grit and determination. And that, more than anything, fueled his admiration. For once, Alexander set aside the shield of wealth and power. If he approached her with a check or a proposal of partnership, she would see it as charity, another billionaire flexing control. That wasn't what he wanted. He didn't want her gratitude, he wanted her heart. So, he made a decision: he would support her anonymously. An investment flowed quietly into her startup fund under private trust. He arranged for her first networking event to receive subtle sponsorship, ensuring it would draw attention without her ever knowing he was behind it. Then came his personal appearances, small, calculated, but meaningful. He showed up at her first launch event, not as the intimidating CEO, but as a man genuinely curious about her work. He asked thoughtful questions, listened to her explanations with focused interest, and nodded with genuine pride when she spoke of her goals. Amora, caught off guard, couldn't help but wonder. Why was Alexander here? Why now? His presence unsettled her, not because it was unwelcome, but because it stirred emotions she was desperately trying to bury. To her, his attentiveness felt polite, perhaps even a gesture of goodwill to a former employee. But when she noticed him lingering at the edges of the room, eyes following her with quiet admiration, her heartbeat betrayed her composure. Still, she told herself it was nothing. A billionaire like Alexander King didn't step down from his empire for someone like her. And yet, as he smiled faintly across the crowd, something in her chest whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. Amora sat at her desk late one evening, sketching designs for a client, when a memory slipped in uninvited. She could almost smell the faint trace of Alexander's cologne, hear the quiet rustle of his suit jacket as he worked late across the hall. There had been so many nights like that. Two people in a near-empty office, the city glittering beyond the glass, silence heavy with words neither dared to speak. She remembered one night vividly. It was well past midnight, her eyes strained from the glow of the computer screen. Without a word, Alexander had appeared beside her, setting down a cup of steaming tea. "You've been at it too long," he'd said, his tone softer than she'd ever heard. Their eyes had locked for a moment longer than necessary, something unspoken passing between them. Then, as quickly as it came, he retreated behind the mask of professionalism. On the other side of the city, Alexander found himself haunted by the same memories. He remembered the way her laughter once filled the office during a rare light-hearted moment. The sound had disarmed him, pulling at a part of his soul he thought long buried. He remembered the way she had touched his arm lightly during a presentation when he seemed tense, a gesture so small, yet it had stayed with him. There had been countless almost moments, the lingering glances, the hands brushing as she passed him a file, the silent understanding when their eyes met in crowded rooms. Each time, his pride, his fear of vulnerability, had forced him to retreat. Each time, her professionalism kept her silent. Now, with distance between them, those memories felt sharper, more dangerous. Both Amora and Alexander realized the truth they had never dared to admit. Their connection had always been more than employer and employee. It had been something deeper, something fragile and powerful, waiting to be acknowledged. And that truth, though still unspoken, pressed heavier with every passing day. The grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers, their golden light cascading over polished marble floors. Amora adjusted the hem of her emerald gown, nerves tightening in her stomach. Tonight's networking gala was crucial for her new business, a chance to connect with potential clients and investors. She had worked tirelessly to prepare her presentation, never imagining what surprise awaited her. As she entered, her breath caught. The banners displayed at the entrance read boldly, "Sponsored by King Enterprises." Her heart stumbled. Alexander. Trying to steady herself, she reminded her racing mind that this was just business. Perhaps he hadn't even known she'd be here. But when she spotted him across the room, tall, commanding, and impossibly magnetic, she realized there was no coincidence. His gaze found hers instantly, locking on as if she were the only person in the room. To her shock, he approached not with the cool detachment she remembered, but with warmth in his expression. "Amora," he greeted softly, his voice smooth yet tinged with something vulnerable. "It's been too long." She forced a polite smile. "Mr. King. I didn't realize this event was under your company's wing." His lips curved. "Let's just say I've taken a new interest in ventures that inspire me." His eyes lingered on her, making the implication unmistakable. Before she could respond, the music shifted to a slow, elegant waltz. Alexander extended his hand. "Dance with me." Against her better judgment, she placed her hand in his, and he led her onto the dance floor. The world around them blurred as his arm settled gently around her waist, guiding her with surprising ease. Sparks crackled in every step, every touch. For a fleeting moment, Amora let herself feel it, the rhythm of his heartbeat close to hers, the intensity of his gaze melting her defenses. But then reality struck like a cold wave. She pulled back slightly, her voice low but firm. "Why now, Alexander? Why when I've finally let go?" His hand tightened ever so slightly, unwilling to release her. "Because I should have never let you go in the first place." Amora's chest ached. She stepped back, the music continuing without her, leaving both of them suspended in questions neither dared to fully answer. In the days following the gala, Alexander found himself restless. The memory of Amora's touch lingered, as did the way she had pulled away from him on the dance floor. He wanted to speak the truth, to finally confess the feelings he had buried for years, but every time he tried to form the words, pride tightened around his throat. Billionaires did not beg. Men like him did not risk rejection. And yet, when it came to Amora, none of those rules seemed to matter. He sought her out again, showing up at her small office one afternoon under the pretense of discussing her business. She looked up from her desk, startled. "Mr. King," she said cautiously, using the formal title like a shield. "Alexander," he corrected gently. "Please. Just Alexander." Her brow furrowed. "Why are you here? You don't need to involve yourself in this. I'm not your employee anymore." The words stung more than she intended, but they were true. Their dynamic had shifted, and she refused to let him blur the lines. Alexander clenched his jaw, fighting the instinct to command instead of confess. He wanted to tell her that he hadn't come as a CEO, but as a man desperate for her presence. Yet the fear of seeing her turn away kept his admission locked inside. "I believe in what you're building," he said instead, his tone carefully measured. "I wanted to see how I might help." Amora shook her head, her voice soft but firm. "I don't need your help. I need to stand on my own. Whatever you're offering, it feels like charity." Their eyes met, heavy with tension, neither willing to yield. She resisted because she feared opening her heart would only lead to heartbreak. He hesitated because vulnerability was a language he had never learned to speak. Two hearts, drawn together yet shackled by pride and fear, stood in silent battle. And though neither spoke the words aloud, both felt the truth pressing at the edges of their souls. Love was there, waiting, but it demanded a courage neither had yet found. Amora had just finished a long day of meetings when her phone buzzed with a notification. She frowned at the email, scanning the words twice to be sure she read correctly. A large, unexpected investment had been wired into her business account, a sum significant enough to cover her expansion plans for the next year. Confused, she immediately called her advisor, who explained the funds had come from a private investor who wished to remain anonymous. But when Amora arrived at her office the next morning, Alexander King was already waiting for her, seated calmly in the reception area as though he belonged there. Her stomach dropped. "You," she whispered, eyes narrowing. "It was you, wasn't it?" He rose to his full height, unflinching under her gaze. "Yes." Amora's heart pounded. "Why, Alexander? If you think you can buy your way into my life." His voice cut through, deep and unwavering. "This isn't about buying anything. I didn't invest for profit. I invested because I believe in you." He took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want to be your boss, Amora. I want to be the man who believes in you, in every dream you've fought for." Her breath caught. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her more than the money ever could. This wasn't the cold billionaire she had known in the office, the one who hid behind clipped commands and guarded expressions. This was a man laying down his pride, exposing the truth he had carried for too long. Amora turned away, her emotions colliding. She wanted to reject him, to cling to the safety of her defenses, but her heart betrayed her. For years she had wondered if he saw her, truly saw her, and now, standing here, she realized he always had. Slowly, she met his gaze again, her voice trembling. "Alexander, I don't know if I can trust this." "Trust you? I'll wait as long as it takes," he replied softly. "But I need you to know this isn't about business. It's about us. About what I should have said years ago." Amora's walls cracked, and for the first time, hope slipped quietly through. The restaurant Alexander chose was nothing like the glittering venues Amora expected of him. Instead, it was intimate, candlelit tables, soft jazz playing in the background, and a quiet corner where the world seemed far away. He had reserved the entire space, not to impress her with extravagance, but to give them privacy. Amora sat across from him, her heart unsteady. The man before her was both familiar and unfamiliar, still the powerful CEO she had known, yet softened by something she could no longer ignore. His eyes never left her face, as though memorizing every expression. "Amora," he began, his voice low, deliberate, "I've made many mistakes in my life. But the greatest was letting you walk away without telling you the truth." Her breath caught, but she stayed silent, her fork resting untouched on the plate. He leaned forward slightly, vulnerability clear in his gaze. "I've loved you for years. From the late nights when I watched you push through exhaustion with determination, to the quiet moments when your laughter made even the darkest days bearable. I hid it, out of fear, out of pride. But I can't hide anymore." Tears welled in Amora's eyes before she could stop them. The weight of his words pressed against the ache she had carried silently for so long. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Do you know why I left, Alexander? It wasn't just for my dreams. It was because I loved you, and I thought I could never have you. Being near you, day after day, pretending it was only work, it was tearing me apart." Emotion thickened the air between them. For the first time, both stripped of masks, they allowed truth to fill the silence. Alexander reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "Then don't walk away again. Stay. Not as my assistant, not as someone in my shadow, but as the woman I love." Her tears slipped freely now, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she rose, meeting him halfway across the small table. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening with the force of years denied. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise, the beginning of everything they had been too afraid to claim. The days after their first kiss felt like stepping into a new world. Gone were the walls of formality and silence that had once kept them apart. Alexander no longer spoke to Amora like an executive to his assistant. He spoke as a man who had finally surrendered to his heart. Every word, every glance carried tenderness that startled her and warmed her in equal measure. But Alexander was not a man who waited once he had made a decision. A week later, he invited Amora to the rooftop garden of his penthouse. The city lights stretched endlessly around them, stars scattered above as though the universe itself bore witness. Amora arrived in a simple dress, the night air brushing against her skin. She expected dinner, perhaps another quiet conversation. What she did not expect was Alexander standing there without the armor of wealth, without grand displays of luxury. No diamond ring glittered in his hand. No orchestra played. There was only him, raw, vulnerable, and utterly sincere. He stepped closer, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Amora, I've spent years building empires, controlling outcomes, ensuring I never lost. But with you, I've already lost too much time. I don't want to waste another day pretending life is complete without you. Her chest tightened, tears stinging her eyes as he continued. I'm not offering you a fortune, or a title, or a life in the shadows of my name. I'm offering you me, my flaws, my fears, my love. I want you not as my assistant, not as a chapter one look back on, but as my wife, my partner, my forever. Amora pressed a trembling hand to her lips, overwhelmed. For years she had believed he saw her only as capable hands behind a desk, never as a woman worthy of his heart. And yet here he was, shattering every doubt with the simple courage of truth. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking into a smile. Yes, Alexander. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he'd finally found the missing piece of his life. She said goodbye to her boss, never knowing she was saying hello to her forever.